Hello, everyone. I'm just trying to adapt to a different environment here. And being a highly sensitive person, I have to get it like just right. So hello. I'm excited for tonight's topic, but I'm looking a little bit cloudy here. Excuse me a minute. Okay, maybe it's just on my end. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for saying hello. Look at everybody coming in here tonight. That's awesome. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Where are we going? Okay. Great to see everyone here tonight. Let's see if Mark is here. I'm not sure he's going to make it in time. Let's have a look here. One moment. All right. Well, we will just start diving in to tonight's topic. Great. Okay, so I hope everybody's doing well tonight, and thanks for coming in here, joining me on it's a holiday weekend, but it's a Monday night, and the week is starting tomorrow, so let's just start now. How many are there here? Right now, there's 30 people here right now. And so that's great. So when I started putting together tonight's topic, I really started to realize what I think is a very under-researched and perhaps underexplored area of pain treatment, of a lot of kind of chronic conditions that hopefully tonight you'll gain a bit of clarity, a bit of understanding, and you'll be able to see, does this pertain to me? And sometimes it's not really clear when we're talking about HSP or highly sensitive person. But I'll give you a little bit of background before we jump in. So, I've been working in the pain world for quite a few years now. And also in my private work, a number of years back, I started to work with what I thought was a separate population of highly sensitive people who, really felt things deeply and had a hard time unhooking themselves from deep emotions and deep emotional processing. Took things very personally, felt things longer and deeper. So really the common advice out there wasn't really being helpful for them. Like just forget about it, or just do it, or just go ahead, or just forgive that person, move on. These types of things were just impossible for them because there was a level of emotional processing that had to happen. And so as time went on, I realized that there was quite an overlap in these two groups of people, which makes sense. Those that were feeling things deeply, and we know this now, don't we, were often feeling pain, anxiety, fatigue, also on a deeper level. And so tonight's webinar is really not to say you are, you aren't, or anything like that, but just to give you an overview about something that you might get curious about that might help you to understand and might actually also broaden your tools of pain management and taking care of yourself, really looking after yourself. So how many people tonight are familiar with the term HSP or highly sensitive person, not as something that you've been called, like, oh, you're so sensitive, but more as a trait of a certain population of people, type of people. Yeah, okay. Thumbs up. Okay, so the Empath Survival Guide is a really good one. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Okay. I'm the very definition. Yes, is childhood. Okay. Great. Thank you. So often, I know for myself, it was very much in my adult years that I had a very distinct awareness that other people didn't necessarily process things or feel things the way that I do. And that was like a big insight for me because it really makes the world a confusing place when you can't understand why, people are not feeling things or reacting the same way that you are. And if you've ever had that experience, it can put you in a place of like, what is wrong with those people? Why can't and vice versa. They can't always understand how you feel things so deeply because it's a feeling. It's a visceral experience in your body that when you're a child and you're overly sensitive, you don't know that it might be different than what other people are feeling. And again, it's very hard to describe to someone else because um, if they don't have that experience, it's very hard to relate to. So let's have a look at what this means, some of the advantages, some of the pitfalls, and then where it overlaps with an experience of ongoing pain. And I've just put together some slides kind of to keep myself on track and just know that yeah, someone mentioned the Empath Survival Guide is Paige says, yeah, the Empath is a good book. And also one I'll be referring to, which really was groundbreaking, by Dr. Elaine Aron, called The Highly Sensitive Person, which really kind of coined the term of a list of traits that people were observing. Okay, so let's just dive in here. So we're going to talk about what exactly is an HSP, because you may have heard in your own life, we're just out there, that being sensitive maybe isn't a great thing to be. I would venture to argue that managed well, it is a wonderful trait to possess. It is a wonderful way to be. But if you're also struggling with chronic pain, you really need to be aware of this. And I would also venture to say that we live in a world that has turned a little bit upside down. Oh, am I recording? Yes, I am. Turned a little bit upside down. And I asked the question, why is sensitivity not valued as much as it possibly could be? And why is that in our culture? Because in my view, it's not the sensitivity itself, but it's actually the environment we live in that doesn't value it that is more of the problem. It's not our job to change the world or the environment, but we can come into a place of valuing what this trait brings us. And that involves a different part of our neurology, a different part of our brain that can help to move us away from pain. So I find that really exciting. We're going to look at what the traits are of an HSP and also the overlap with the pain experience. Okay, so it's a lot of writing, but I did want to just make sure I kept myself on track. So it was, as I said, first coined by Dr. Elaine Aron in 1996 in her book, The Highly Sensitive Person. But she'd been starting to research this with her husband only since about 1991. And what they found, and there's been a lot of like sociological studies done on it, that many species, from animals to fruit flies to chimpanzees to all kinds of species, have a minority, about 20%, that are highly sensitive. And they have a different genetic makeup, slightly, not completely, slightly different genetic makeup across the board. So in general, what they found, and let me know if you think that this relates to you, this trait or this part of the population adopted a survival strategy of, rather than reacting quickly, they pausing to check, observe, reflect on, or process what has been noticed before choosing an action. So can you imagine an animal doing that? Kind of standing back, watching, observing before choosing an action. And this is what they started to realize was a depth of processing trait. So a depth of processing the situation. In other words, the way I see it is taking it all in, you know, the emotional part, the if it's people, you know, the looks on their faces, the feeling of energy in the room, the tone of voice, the temperature, the like, there's a lot in that. And when one is busy processing, it takes a little time. So often these when in the human, these are the humans that are often thought, at least as children, to be shy, to be fearful, or introverted. They just don't speak up, or they're always on the outside. They're always on the outside looking in. Well, they just don't fit in, and of course, being highly sensitive, that individual is going to pick that up. And it's a very big, it's a misunderstanding of what is actually happening in the nervous system. And so we'll unpack that a little bit. But what this depth of processing, and I just want you to think about that. And you can think about so many of the pain classes that we've been talking about. Often are referring to this depth of processing. It actually means that you might be paying more attention to details, which can be an advantage or a disadvantage. So you have heard us talk about in our classes about hypervigilance. So tracking, picking up on what's happening in your environment or what's happening with outside of you and taking it in. And also being hypervigilant about ourselves. Hypervigilant, again, that periscope that's scanning our bodies inside, looking for which, it's usually pain that's calling the attention of the nervous system. So you can see how that external paying attention to details, when it's applied internally with pain, what we focus on tends to grow. So we may be more inclined to be hypervigilant also inside ourselves. Let me know if this is resonating out there. So true, goodness. Know if that's ringing true so far. Yes. Okay, there's a few yeses, very much so. Yeah. Yeah. So, when I started really researching this a while back, I really began to see, I'm highly sensitive. I have to like process what I'm saying and what I'm feeling and what I'm trying to get across. I want to just emphasize that this is a very deeply internal experience. I mean, there are people walking the planet, if you're an HSP, this might be hard to believe, that don't have much of it's not better or worse, of an internal experience. They're very much on the outside. And so, highly sensitive people or empaths often have a very deep inside life, internal life. The creatives or the painters or the high the people with imaginations that can write wonderful stories or create beautiful art. That's very much an internal experience, and that can be beautiful. Now you already know what happens when you have pain is that starts to be part of this internal experience. And if that's you, don't you wish you sometimes didn't have such a rich internal experience? um, so I mean, if sometimes that's just a natural way of coping as well. Yeah. So let's try to flip that on his head a little bit. So what they found was that 15 to 20% of people who were genetically different than the others, innately different. That being said, you can become highly sensitive throughout your life. I will say that. But right now, let's look at the 15 to 20 who are just simply born that way. They tend to compare situations, research shows, they compare situations to past situations. So when they're kind of stuck in that depth of processing, they're looking at it for things that look familiar, things that don't look familiar, details. And they tend to learn well from past experiences. So you can see why this is a survival skill. Because if you have someone who just keeps on walking into the crocodile pond, even though there's crocodiles that have chased them out before, but they're not learning from that experience because they don't have that deep internal processing, they're probably not going to survive. HSPs can get stuck in that, right? So when situations are similar, it's very helpful. So I've seen that red car before. I know that it drives fast, so I'm going to be a little bit careful. However, they can also overgeneralize it to mean all red cars and start to avoid or feel anxious in too many situations because it's just there's too many that are so familiar. Now, I really saw this in my trauma practice a lot. Now, trauma can also really sensitize the nervous system because you become very fearful, right? When you've been traumatized. If you see an animal that's being traumatized, you bet your bottom dollar they're going to be hiding in a corner. But I would see this a lot in people, for example, if they had been involved in in a car accident. And because their internal life was so sensitized, they would just have a memory of it and have increased pain or have an increased feeling of fear or sadness from the memory, because that part of their brain that we'll get to is more active, right? So think about that for a moment. When they can imagine that, and then they have this internal experience, they can also imagine, they have the ability to imagine things that are really good, things that taste good, things that are peaceful, exciting. If we practice that, because that it's the same part of the brain that can imagine and feel those emotions. And then, of course, the biggest cost is the overloaded nervous system. Just point blank, HSPs, they're overloaded, they're overstimulated, and they're usually overstressed. Now, that right there was a big generalization. But if you're living in this world without some really tight precautions, it's not difficult for the best of us to become overstimulated. Right? Are you guys, do you guys resonate with that? It's not that difficult. Yeah, I do. Wish I wasn't so observant, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not unusual to live a lot in your head, and which can be a great imaginary place to be as a child. Um, fantastic imagination. I used to write stories that I read now, and it was like, whoa, how did I ever imagine that? But, like you, I probably had a really active imagination. The flip side of that is living in a place of overthinking, procrastination, and over analyzing. Right. So just to be aware of that. Hmm. Yeah. So the connections, yeah, too much of anything over time. Fun, a great point, Kim. Fun as well. A lot of stimulation, a lot of socializing, um, as well as, maybe too much news or too much caffeine. Not all HSPs are introverts. So that is also a myth. However, a lot of them are. A lot of people who are overly sensitive, naturally out there with people, have to go and replenish themselves with a lot of alone time to reground, um, to refresh, and to restore their nervous systems before they can go back out again. But that's not true of all. Some really love being around people. But of course, you probably know what I'm going to say. They have to be the right type of people for them, not in stressful situations. Also observant. It's so annoying to think things through deeper than others sometimes. Yeah. One of the advantages about that, you can also get stuck in that for sure, but is that often we can see all sides of the coin. So it's hard to be black and white. This is right, this is wrong. Sometimes we go to that just for a sense of peace and calm in our own body. Like, you got to make that person wrong because I just can't handle this gray area anymore. But we can see, someone's behavior in light of their past. We can understand people at a deep level. And again, I want to be clear that it doesn't make an HSP better or worse than anyone else. Some people have just amazing traits in another part of their life. They're great athletes or whatever it might be. But HSPs can really see all sides of the coin, which is a strength. And it can also be a little bit crazy making, speaking from experience. I'm loving all these comments. I literally shake. Yeah. Be like, this is super aware of that, because that's exactly how it can affect pain. You can see that. Overstimulated can be exhausting and stressful. Your generalization was bang on. Okay. Introversion is part of avoiding overstimulation. That's true. So withdrawal is really natural. You come out in this world for long enough, it's like, whew, I've got to withdraw just to save myself here. And we may mistake that for introversion, when we actually really feel lonely and want to be with people, but we just find them exhausting. And that's where the type of people, how long, where, what are you doing, and boundaries really become essential, because you deserve to be with people, right? People that nurture you, that really feed you, nourish you. Yeah, pets are good. I'd love to know what percentage of people here tonight love their pets, have pets. Uh, okay, so it's a lot of writing here. So you could just ask yourself these questions. This is from Dr. Elaine Aron. Are you easily overwhelmed by things like bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics, or sirens nearby? Do you get rattled when you have a lot to do in a short amount of time? I don't know about you, but I hate rushing. I find it very stressful. I have to have a pretty calm, I can do it if I have to. Probably did it, a lot in my life, but I really appreciate a nice rhythm. Do you make a point of avoiding violent movies and TV shows? And if you don't, you might feel it in your body when you go to bed at night. You might have dreams. You might feel off the next day. Do you need to withdraw during busy days into bed or a darkened room or some other place where you can have privacy and relief from the situation? And if you do, remember, these are just indicators of a sensitive nervous system, but you can see that they're also really good pain management strategies for when you're overwhelmed. Do you make it a high priority to arrange your life to avoid upsetting or overwhelming situations? Well, if you do, does that become stressful? Because the flip side of that is it might be a call to be able to develop some resilience or some capacity, to be able to manage uh, more stress in your life, right? It's not a necessity, but it might be. Do you notice or enjoy delicate or fine scents, tastes, sounds, or works of art? In other words, beauty. Can music bring you to tears? Does art light you up? Do you cry through movies and it kind of feels good, in the empathy side of things? Do you have a rich and complex inner life? If you're struggling with pain, that might mean a very uncomfortable inner life at the moment, but this is the potential for you. When you were a child, did your parents or teachers see you as sensitive or shy? And maybe you, because of that, at least when I was growing up, this was only started to be known in the 90s. So often when we're growing up, bullying can be devastating, or being hurt, left out, shunned, or alone as a child or a teenager can be traumatizing, right? Because that hurt or that aloneness, again, if you're a highly sensitive person, you feel things deeper and you feel things longer than the other 80% of the population. I love it. 5 dogs. Oh my goodness. I love that. When I go to conferences, I preempt my colleagues that once I reach my people threshold, I will take off and go fill my cup. Awesome. Yeah, really taking responsibility for your nervous system. Sorry, I just thought I heard something. So if this is you, what I want you to know is that your trait is normal. It's found in 15 to 20% of the population. So it's too many, it's too much of a population to be a disorder, but not enough to be well understood by the majority of people around you. So chances are, if you are one of those 1 in 5 people, that it could be that the 4 people around you didn't understand what was going on with you, why you're different, or why you're more emotional maybe than other people. All right, so many people have found that they learned very young. They interpreted from the people around them that there's something wrong with them. That's not unusual for a child to interpret things that way to begin with. But if you have people saying to you, what is wrong with you? Why are you so sensitive? Pick yourself up, or whatever it might be, or don't cry. For boys, I think for men, can be even far more painful. They might have found or believed that they're flawed, they're not strong enough, they're just not strong enough for this world, too sensitive. But I found that these beliefs often can create more distress than the high sensory processing itself. So when you start to, if we lived in a world that totally validated, and there are examples of this, that really validated those people, the HSPs, as being like, whoa, okay, you have access to this inner world. If it was that way around, I don't think it would be so much of a problem in the world. Because the research shows actually the opposite, that this can be a highly adaptive trait. And Darwin said it wasn't actually survival of the fittest, it was survival of the people who were the most adaptable. And when you have a sensitive person walking into a room, sussing it out, kind of checking it out, figuring it out, how to best adapt, how to proceed, I would say that that is highly adaptable. Because telling someone to stop being sensitive is like telling someone to stop having green eyes. It's not something that is debatable. This is a part of your nervous system, and we want to fine tune it and lean into it in a way that's going to be helpful, particularly in the face of pain. So what they found a number of different things. And if you are interested, this is mostly, I believe it's taken from Elaine Aron's book, if you're interested in the research, but you don't ever have to be. They found that people who have highly sensitive, or even going further, are called empaths. And empaths are people who tend to really be able to feel the emotions of other people. So they don't just recognize the emotions in people, they actually feel them in their body. And you can be like that, an emotional empath. You can be someone that really feels animals. You can be an earth empath, someone who really feels the earth. But what they found is that this portion of the population has an increase in mirror neurons. And the mirror neurons are the part of humans that I feel are so radically important, if not the most important thing. Because what we're seeing in the world right now is really a deficiency in mirror neurons. Anyway, we don't have to get into that, but mirror neurons are the part of us that empathize with other people. So if I'm talking to you and you are feeling really sad, those neurons in my brain that are the same as your sadness neurons are going to light up in my brain. And that is what we call empathy. That lets me connect with you because I have an idea of how you're feeling. Because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't really have great connections with people. So HSPs may have an increase in these mirror neurons that mirror what others feel. So you are going to pick up and absorb and feel what the people around you feel, sometimes if they're not even feeling it. And that's why, you can walk into a room and you can notice a look on someone's face, you can notice a tone of voice. And often you don't do well with, oh, I'm fine, when you sense that they're not actually fine, right? And so if you're feeling and thinking deeply, you don't always really like small talk. Like sometimes you just want to go deep into the real thing. Um, and not everybody does, right? And you maybe like alone time to recharge, but not always. So that might help explain for you sometimes. You have to really, when you walk into a room or you're with someone, you have to notice, is this mine or theirs? It's a skill. Is this my emotion or is it theirs? Because before I came in this room, I was feeling pretty good. And it doesn't mean that you have to block them or avoid them, but you now know that your job is to stand back and empathize, but not absorb and take it on. Because if you already have pain, you've got enough going on and you've got enough emotions happening in your body already that you don't need the emotions of the world. Doesn't mean you're not a nice person. In fact, it means you're going to be healthier in the long run and be able to be there for people without getting flattened by how they feel. Oh, yes. The name of the book is The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. Aron. Yeah. So I have trouble watching the news for this reason. 100%. And sometimes it draws us in. And I would say to be ultra aware of that, because you can watch the news and notice how you feel. But if it's hijacking your day, it's probably not worth it. Maybe you can check in, you set your own limits, check in once a week. Or, you can check in with someone for, the updates. But if you get knocked off center, you absolutely don't want to start your day with the news. It just doesn't make sense. You don't have to. So this is what Dr. Aron boils it down to: that depth of processing that we've been talking about, a general overstimulation of the nervous system, an emotional reactivity because of this increase in mirror neurons, and also almost like sometimes I feel it's just like having a thinner skin to the world. And I don't mean that in a negative way. And being able to sense the subtle. So the subtle tones of a text, the subtle tones of a voice. And that can be helpful. And it can be sometimes not helpful if you then take it on, because you want to recognize, oh, yeah, that's what I do. And then be able to leave it unless it's something to respond to. Okay, I hear a low hum in my region, deep in changes of vibration. In the winter, it's worse. I mean, this could be part of why people are extra sensitive to the weather changes. If it's a nervous system stimulation. In the winter, it's worse when there's no leaves on the trees. I feel like it's turning me ill. I'll have to have a fan or something on all the time. Nobody else hears it. I'm wondering if headphones or earplugs would be helpful. I personally have to sleep with earplugs all the time. I have for probably since I was a teenager, because I'm ultra aware of any sound. Zero tolerance for drama. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Research is similar hum tracked down to the hum from the pipelines. Huh. Interesting, Kim. Yeah. So as a result, we can be more prone to pain, and she does talk about this in the book, in her book, and you'll find it other places as well. Um, that empaths or highly sensitive people can be more prone to chronic pain and chronic conditions for a variety of reasons. One is just the impact on a daily basis. Another is the emotional reactivity that we know exists in the same part of the brain as pain reactivity activity. Um, and it calls for something more than medications and injections. The other thing is that highly sensitive nervous systems can also be more sensitive to medications. So, and if that's you, that's a conversation, to have with your healthcare provider. So the over arousal is hard, and habits and lifestyle changes are essential, as most of you know, because you've been in these classes for a while, for an overloaded nervous system. And so this really takes it away from any blame on what other people are doing or not doing, because they're just doing their thing, and really coming back to you and you looking after your body, because nobody else can do this work for you. So noticing where, with whom you become stressed, noticing what you need, taking time out, silence, breathing, grounding, whew, regulating your system are probably key, not just once a week, but every single day, multiple times a day, even. Dr. Aaron has a whole section on, being in the healthcare system, because that's such a part of people's lives. And because we're connected empathically, of course, it's always better if you have a trusting relationship with your doctor. Sometimes we don't have a lot of choice around that right now, but some people like to go to even appointments with a trusted friend so that you can keep your system calm when you're getting help, getting support. Maybe if you tend to get kind of discombobulated, make a list to organize your thoughts, because the stimulation can come in and distract you. I wear earplugs every night. I need to block out. Yeah, me too. I just thought I was a weirdo. Right? You're not alone. Look, we're a whole group of weirdos here. Just kidding. I hear hum and vibration makes me crazy. Yeah, not the only one. The other thing I want to distinguish it from, no, I'll leave that for now. Okay, so now that we know all that, now that we know we're not alone and we have to really manage the input coming in into the system, let's talk about the advantages. Because when we can start to amplify the advantages, if we just leave the disadvantages, manage them, do the best you can, but really focus your attention on the part of your brain associated with the advantages. We have a different language for it in the pain management world, but you can also really regulate your system. Advantages is deeply feeling and often and connected with people. We often value friendships, and we're often loyal because we care. We have access to deep care. And again, it's not a better or worse, it's just fact. For that, of course, you want to make sure that the people that you are loyal to are also nourishing to you because you're probably a really great listener. You're a good support person for other people. I can probably guarantee that. And because you're such a great listener, you have to be aware of not getting drained. Right? So, boundaries. And you're empathic, you can feel what other people feel. Doesn't mean you have to take it on or just watch. Do you feel responsible for how other people feel? Do you make that your responsibility to make them feel better? And again, you can be a support if your system, your capacity allows it, but watch for getting drained. You probably notice things, small details, maybe a great imagination. Use it to your advantage. Often better at spotting errors, highly conscientious. I can usually spot a typo a mile away because it stands out to me. You might feel amplified joy. You have access to excitement, inspiration, pleasure, desire. And can you allow yourself really to go deep into those areas, no matter what's happening in your life? Can you really absorb a sunrise or a sunset or a painting, beauty, nature, art, music, food, just savor a piece of chocolate? Allow your senses to be amplified in a different way. Something we all call mindfulness now, right? Okay, so, this is out of place, this slide. Increased sensitivity to pain. So we often have an increased sensitivity to pain, sometimes more sensitive to medications, interactions, whether negative or positive. So really absorb your positive interactions with people. You just love up, your friendships, your relationships that feel good to you. And it gives you that burst of dopamine that and serotonin that we have access to. Or more open to the emotions amplified in the areas of the brain associated with the pain. So remember, you feel things deeper and longer, probably, than most people. And so being able to notice it, and then be able to manage it, write it out, feel it, self-care, all those things are critical. Sometimes skin sensitivities, maybe allergies, environmental sensitivities. So just have a look here. Does this get stronger, grow as we age, or are living in chronic pain? Kim, I think it gets, we know, from central sensitization that those neurons associated with pain, danger, fear, when they start getting excited, they start to amplify and multiply. So the answer is partly yes. And so being aware of that is a good reason to double down on your other sensitivities to the good, to loving rest, to good food, to nourishing yourself. And so yes, definitely when it comes to pain, but it doesn't have to stay like that, because remember, with neuroplasticity, anything that has been changed in the nervous system can also be changed back. And that is true at all ages until the day you die. So it doesn't have to go in one direction. Mm-hmm. More sensitive. As I age, my pain has gotten worse. Yeah, I do wonder about that. And I know, again, as I just said, with pain, that with central sensitization, that it can get worse and it can be shifted back. As for HSP sensitivity as you age, I'm not sure of that. My sense is that it could become more amplified. Um, I'm just thinking it through. If it's not, we're not taught this when we're teenagers or 20s or even in our 30s, and a lot more things happen to us, right? And so, unless we know this, things can start to add up. So the reservoir of emotion inside our body can start getting really full. And there's a lot of research around that. And Nicole Sacks's book, Mind Your Body, is a great resource for that, for starting to kind of drain the reservoir of emotion in your body. Where are you gone? Tinnitus or tinnitus. Yeah. Thanks for that, Dave. It's not tinnitus. Okay. Seriously, beauty, nature, art, and good food are better medicine than pain meds. They they up your dopamine, your serotonin, your sense of connection, and I want to say peace, but it's actually something more than that. I'm really thinking of the word. It's a good question. Wonder if being an HSP increases the chance of vasovagal syncope, brief loss of consciousness due to neurologically induced drop in. Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Brooke. Contentment. Yes, maybe that's it. That sense of beauty and contentment. Soul food. Yeah. So really key, again, to come back to sleep, nutrition, anything that restores your system, learning about depth of processing. Oh, there's a typo. Look at that. And learning to take extra care of yourself. And extra care does not always mean resting more, but it might mean having challenges throughout your day interspersed with rest. Challenge and rest, this kind of pendulation. Boundaries and learning to speak up about what you need, and knowing that being highly sensitive is not a disorder. It's a trait, and it can be a gift or a curse. It just depends on how you manage it. And that becomes, I think, particularly true with pain, with chronic pain, or with chronic illness, chronic conditions. So that was a lot. Let's just stop for a moment. Maybe take a breath. You can do some of that grounding right now into your feet and your seat, because you might notice if you're HSP, you can be, unless you're grounded in your root, in your state, you can tend to be, get wobbled around by the wind or emotions or your environment. So coming back, grounding yourself deep like an old oak tree into your roots. So HSP and chronic pain are the greatest challenges. Pain, yeah, this is it. Yeah. So knowing, I think, having a plan there for what you do, what works for you when you feel overwhelmed is key. And, it's going to be individual. It's going to be like, what do I do? How do I notice when I'm becoming more overwhelmed? And how do I come back to center myself, maybe lean into beauty or a positive sensation, or like Neil Pearson talked about, the value of imagination is a skill that we have that can really help us to feel better and move better. So I hope that has been helpful for you, to be able to see it not as a disorder, but to give you more options for going gently and tenderly with yourself, and an invitation to really allow yourself to get steeped in what you love, to move towards something you feel passionate about. Maybe you decide, if you can, to pick up a new hobby or painting, or something that really speaks to your soul. And that is all good pain management. Yes, it is recorded, and the Monday night webinars will get posted, at least within a few days, up onto the website. So you can watch it there, Lisa. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're very welcome. Tomorrow we have our last reframe pain that you might be interested in. And then on Thursday we have our mindfulness and relaxation. It's all good medicine for a highly sensitive person. Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you so much for your participation. And it sounds like this was a topic that resonated with a lot of people. So I invite you to read more, to explore more, and just remember, you also have access to a deep internal place that can be nourishing and satisfying as well. All right, everyone. Good night. Tammy, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, there's reframe pain. I'll send out the reminder shortly. Good. Glad you enjoyed it, Anita. Bye for now.